This segment of the Chopin podcast is brought to you by the Chopin Foundation of the United States, dedicated to promoting young American pianists and making Chopin's music accessible to all. In October 2021, I had the good fortune to interview Italian-Slovenian pianist Alexander Gadjiev for the Tone-Based Piano YouTube channel while he was preparing to give his second-round recital at the International Chopin competition. Little did either of us know at the time that he would go on to win one of 2 silver medals awarded in Warsaw that year, along with Kyohei Sarita. During his competition journey, Gadjiev performed 2 different Polonaises en route to the finals: the F-sharp minor, opus 44, and the Polonaise-Fantasy, opus 61. I recently interviewed Alex again on a video call, where I captured his reaction to both his performances from 2021 during a much longer conversation about the deeper meanings of the music. We also had a chance to revisit another performance of the Polonaise-Fantasy given by Alex's teacher, Pavel Gililov, himself a laureate of the 1975 Warsaw competition.
When it comes to me listening, let's say, to the genre of Polonaise, I must say, of course, I loved the Polonaise Heroic, which was very, very popular also in my childhood, even in my little town of Gorizia. But somehow I found it a little bit too majestic for me. I always found it like it's almost too much in a sense. But then when I discovered the Polonaise-Fantasy, I almost could not believe it's the same composer and the same genre, because they are, although different, they are related. I think in the Polonaise-Fantasy, Chopin really does something very magical. He's taking a standard, so to say, a standard genre, and he's improvising with it. And there is both this element of being within a square that we know, and at the same time just using that to go somewhere else, to portray actually an array of emotions that go way beyond, let's say, the more stylistic polonaises, which I would say the polonaises are definitely a very proud dance, and of course used also to this day even very often in Poland to open balls and to open a very specific and highly ranked events. But the polonaises have also very often an intimate middle section, which is somewhat, I would say, less melodic than other works. They are more static, more staying in an aura, in an atmosphere, like, for example, the mazurka that happens in the middle section of the F-sharp minor. And with the Polonaise-Fantasy, this doesn't happen. It's not so linear. The dramaturgy, the time expansion is really, it happens from many directions and dimensions at the same time.
And I want to start right in the middle. I want to sort of drop us in maybe 2/3 of the way through the piece. And I'm going to play a little bit from your performance, actually. Because for me, one of the most striking moments of this music is we reach a kind of recapitulation. And then a theme appears out of nowhere. For me, this is a pivotal moment in the piece, and always one of my favorites, especially given where it's about to unfold. Tell us about this whole passage.
I don't know. It's difficult to say. You know, this theme really appears from nowhere, and it's at the same time it's a very personal lament. It's definitely something very, very subjective that comes from the depth of one's feelings, but at the same time it has a certain quality of reaching something. There are like wider intervals that happen here and there. Someone is trying to reach out. You know, he's trying to tell to the world something very, very personal, but in the kindest way possible, which is not possible because to tell something to the entire world, you need to shout normally. But, you know, it's almost like, I don't know, now an association that just comes into mind is just an almost non-violent way to reach out to everyone, to everything. And I think what I personally also find extremely beautiful, it's how this harmonic line, how this descending chromatic seems to sink into really the abyss of nowhere. And then from there, this trill emerges. And I think this trill is somehow the energy that comes back, you know? He's lost and he almost gave up in a very gentle way. Not gave up in terms of no hope. Gave up in terms of I accept my destiny somehow. And then this trill comes, which is also, now I think about it, there is also in the Barcarolle a beautiful trill before the recapitulation. And this trill it feels like he's adding layers and layers of excitement, of emotion, of energy that comes back to life.
The Barcarolle trill is similar on the surface, but it ends up just being the theme. This doesn't end in a theme. This breaks up open.
It breaks open, but then from that, let's say, you know, it's like having a big wave that breaks, right? A big wave that breaks into the ocean, into the rocks. And then from that clash, from that energy, you just see the remains of the wave. And then the beginning comes back, as we know.
Mm.
As a way to get everything out and to clean your energy completely and to start again from scratch. I think generally in a lot of music, if I think, for example, about last Beethoven sonatas, just also comes to mind at the moment, these trills are used when, I would say, the composer doesn't know anymore how else to express this inner excitement. It's not an excitement of full textures, white chords, arpeggios, and scales. It's an excitement of like this vibration. I would say the genuine need for the piano also to vibrate like voice. I remember my teacher always saying, Gililov, that trills shouldn't be just mechanically played, but very melodically. And I remember first time I heard of this concept, I was a little bit confused because I thought trills are a fast ornament. And then suddenly someone tells me, no, trills can be also a melodic tool, and they can have different speeds, they can have different intentions, different intensities. And it took me a while to feel that, I would say.
There's a sensual quality to your playing in this French way, perhaps, of relishing in a detail, but not making it indulgent or syrupy. It's sensuous and subtle, and then your ear will, and then therefore your fingers will follow that line to its conclusion, and then you have a very strong polyphonic sense of dialogue. This works, especially in Chopin, especially in the Polonaise-Fantasy, and so I really hear you listening and following the music as if it's guiding you, and yet you're the one making it at the same time. I think at the peak of concert piano playing, we are both the leaders and the followers. And when I watch you play this piece, I especially feel that. Does that resonate with you, that sense? Because I hear it in your playing.
I mean, that's wonderful. Also in that specific occasion, I was in a very, altered state of mind. Definitely, it was not my normal day-to-day, me, let's say. So I did feel in a way elevated, if I have to be honest with you in that moment. I mean, what you describe is really an ideal, to be both the one who does, the doer, and at the same time the listener, and the one who is able also to be surprised. This is very difficult, I must admit. It's very difficult, but when it happens, and in that occasion, in many moments, it did happen. And when it happens, it's really one of the most beautiful feelings one can have as a player.
You mentioned your teacher, Gililov. So I thought, why not?
Let's go.
Why don't we let him show us his youthful rendition of this piece from the 1975 Chopin competition in Warsaw, where he would medal.
I don't think people play like this anymore. I cannot think of any concert live that I heard that reminds me of anything like this. There is a certain grandeur of manner in his playing. It doesn't sound like someone who just practiced and planned very well. It's just displayed, you know? That's why I would say grandeur, because it's like it's just there for you to see it. And I don't know, when you hear the passages and things, there is a certain, it's not just ease. It's not that he plays with ease, although he does. And I know it because I've seen it many times in real life. He plays with great ease, but it's not about that. There is a certain naturalness related to each gesture. It's not just like the passages, for example, don't sound like passages. They sound like, to me, like gestures. Like the scale, for example, it sounds just like I don't know, like when you open champagne and there is this fleur that comes out, right? What is it?
Oh yes, the fizz or the
Fizz. Exactly. And now that I think about it, I remember once he even mentioned it during a lesson. He was speaking about something else. This passage should sound like champagne, for example.
Mm.
And there is this element of just great inner connection, first of all, to the instrument and to the music. And at the same time, what I like very much is that there are moments in which the phrasing is not that obvious. It's not just phrasing, like, oh, I phrase this like this, it sounds good and it's correct. No, there are moments where it almost doesn't follow gravity. It goes against gravity in a sense. In Italian, I would say il non detto, the unspoken. He's conveying in certain moments unspoken words. And I think this fits very, very well for Chopin's music.
Although you got the Sonata Prize in 2021, very worthy award. I was most taken, I think, with some of your Polonaise interpretations. You played two of them. Opus 44, the F sharp minor, which I would say is neglected, but it's not anymore. People play it all the time. It's fantastic. Everybody respects it. But of course, it's overshadowed maybe by the Heroic, which is one of the great encore pieces of all time. And more people are playing the Polonaise-Fantasy. Not least because it's required in 2025. It was required in 2010.
I've always had the impression that the Polonaise-Fantasy starts in the past. It does not start in the present. It does not start with, let's say, a fear of something that is about to happen, like, for example, in the F sharp minor, which starts with this motif, which is almost just at the beginning it sounds almost like just a noise. It's so much in the lower register we cannot really recognize what's happening, and then we see how this little drawing, this little circle that he draws with these four notes. I like what I hear. I like it's I would say there is, in Russian one would say есть nerv. There is it's not about being nervous, but there is a nerve. There is a certain it's posed, it's like, it's precise, and there is a certain alertness to it. I remember when Gililov listened to it after the round, he called me and he said, you played the Polonaise as if you had a knife in your teeth. And there is an element of this. Yeah, it sounds dangerous. That's what.
Yeah, and it is a dangerous piece. It's there's a war zone, that you're entering. this Polonaise, at the heart of it, is a dream. And there's dreams in many of Chopin's pieces at the heart of them, and including other Polonaises. And one could say much of the Polonaise-Fantasy has dream elements, but here it is just at the middle, just in the heart of it, just when things couldn't be worse. Suddenly we enter a completely different world. It is a mazurka within a Polonaise, and I'm sure that the poets can run wild with the symbolism of this, but at least let's hear you do it with your fingers.
Interesting playing, actually. You know, you made me think something I haven't done in 3 years. I never listened to my own recording after the competition. It's even difficult to recognize sometimes that.
What about it?
I don't know that happened. Even just the whole experience. I never
because
thought about
it was a kind of dream.
It was a kind of a dream. Yeah,
Yeah.
the whole thing was kind of a dream. Still, maybe the dream could have been even more placid. You know, even more. I don't know if it's an English word.
Yeah.
Placido, like untouchable.
Mm.
There was an element of spontaneity which sometimes turns into a little bit nervous.
It seems to repeat maybe almost one too many times, and that's exactly what it should do, because that's what gives it this perennial quality. It's like, oh wow, we're still here.
And that's also where I start to want to do something, you know.
And you have to resist that, is what you're saying.
You have
maybe.
to respect, or in the end, we like what is convincing, Ben. I think
Yeah.
that's the sort of the truth. So if you want that, you have to do it in a way that it's plausible. You want to be placid, you have to do it in a way that it's not too boring. If you want to change, you have to do it in a way that it is justified without disrupting.
As I have conversations with my wife about a lot, as she's a great pianist too, we sometimes think when we're performing that we might be boring the audience. Uh-oh, they might be getting bored because I haven't done something expressive in a minute, And I think that's the wrong impulse for us. I think we should give listeners more credit. Sometimes when we stick with a single sound and don't bend it, don't break it, we hypnotize them and they lose a sense of time. They don't think, oh man, when are they going to be expressive again? This is not, no, I think that's our issue. That's our sense of impatience.
That is true. That is true. One has to resist this temptation and be in the space of non-action.
Mm-hmm.
The space of non-action. It's a fascinating balance again, because I do find many interpretations boring.
Yeah, but is what's boring that they haven't done a rubato in a while?
No,
Is it that sometimes what's boring
it's just
is
boring.
the rubato? Is the way they keep doing the rubato?
Or it's just boring everything. I think one has to really listen in the end. It's so simple. We pretend to be very smart, but I think in the end it's really simple. You have to listen very intensely, and whatever you want to do, you have to connect it to your listening. So
Yeah.
we have a wish, but if the wish is disconnected to your listening, then it will come out of proportion.
Absolutely. And look, we can't please everybody. If we try to please everybody, then I think we play boring. That's when we play boring, because then you don't take any perspective.
Yeah.
You say, I'll try to be all perspectives at once. And then it's like a politician. They don't believe in anything.
Yeah, it's true. That's why you have to know what you want.
That's right.
Which sometimes is difficult, by the way, because we play music that's already written, and it gives us almost the impression that we don't need to want anything.
The interesting parallel between this piece maybe and the first scherzo. Very belligerent outer sections, and then a dreamlike middle with a drone kind of bass. Obviously, it's the folk song and the baby Jesus. And I think both obviously must have very deep felt patriotic symbolism for Chopin. Obviously, it's hard not to say that he's depicting the warfare that was ongoing, in his homeland during his lifetime, and that these dream sequences, how could they not on some level represent his hopes and dreams and aspirations, or his desires for some kind of peace and tranquility and some promised land, some kind of utopian space, of peace and harmony. It's, it's like, it seems like so obviously that's what's going on, but maybe not. I don't know.
No, I agree. I think, I mean, sometimes we talk about things lightly. Oh yeah, he missed Poland. We talk about things lightly just because we don't understand them. Because I live in Berlin, but whenever I want, I can take a flight and go home.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have that worry.
Mm-hmm.
Now that the world is unfortunately again in several war situations.
Yes.
We know how people feel when they cannot go back. I met just recently some people that can share these experiences, and that definitely is something that we cannot. I mean, if we really want to play that music, in a sense, we have to connect to those things, because they cannot be meaningless. It does not happen.
I think of sort of late Rachmaninoff, or even just the Etude Tableau, things like that. There's a painful sense of the world is not what it once was, and it never will be again. We can't relate to that. I hope we never have to directly relate to that. But yeah, as you say, the world is a precarious and volatile place yet again. Let's just end with your heroic Polonaise. I have to compliment the cinematography and editing on these. I don't know if you've watched this. What an interesting place to play. I guess this is Chopin's, birthplace?
Yeah. It's a very special experience because you get to sleep in the park. It's a big park. And within the park, there is the house that belonged to the Chopin's family where he was born. The atmosphere is very, very quiet, first of all. Like, it's beautiful. There is nature. There are lots of animals, wildlife. And the people that walk there on these Sundays, they're usually with families. They're having a really nice and quiet moment of recollection, of rest. And it's a beautiful place to be and to play in.
Thanks for listening to the Chopin podcast. If you like what I do, consider supporting my Patreon, where I've been posting bonus content with many of the guests who've appeared in this series. For this episode, that includes lengthy supercuts of scenes from my interviews with Garrick Ohlsson and Alexander Gadjiev.